Does wealth dictate literally every aspect of our lives, or is it actually the other way around? Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're unpacking author Oluyomi Oladevid's profound contemplations on wealth, poverty, and those hidden forces driving global trade, starting with the very foundation of how we view everyday economics.
Oladevid anchors her entire analysis on this absolutely fascinating three-word Yoruba proverb, Olowo lo lowa. And she makes this great point that these three simple words actually carry enough substance to spark literally a million lines of thought.
If we translate it literally, it means it is the rich that owns the trade, and that's regardless of what the actual industry is. Using this piece of ancient wisdom, Oladevid critically cross-examines our modern world to ask a massive question. Do the wealthy truly dominate every single aspect of our global existence?
Well, if you look at world trade statistics, the reality is kind of undeniable, right? Rich countries completely dominate the global marketplace. But what's really interesting is that she doesn't just stop at that macro, countrywide level. She brings this concept right down to our individual, everyday human experience.
Think about the universal 24-hour day for a second. Time is literally the one asset every single one of us shares equally. And yet, there is a massive divide in how it's actually utilized. She observes that the wealthy use their economic resources to buy up more hours. They multiply their productive advantage by leveraging other people. Meanwhile, the working poor are pretty much forced to sell their extremely limited time just to survive.
And that disparity? It totally spills over from time right into our physical environments. She highlights how the wealthy command these vast, incredibly comfortable estates. But in stark contrast, the working poor are out there hoping just to rent a decent room, while folks in extreme poverty are pushed into highly inconvenient slums and shantytowns.
So when we talk about financial goals, she notes that these two groups are existing in completely different universes. While the poor are desperately seeking basic day-to-day security and unfortunately falling prey to predatory loan sharks just to get by, the rich are playing the long game. They're focused on achieving top-tier financial freedom and building diversified portfolios to secure wealth for generations to come.
There's also this severe disparity in everyday purchasing power. Oladevid points out that the wealthy actually have the capital to buy in bulk. They effectively shield themselves from inflation and save up for a rainy day. On the flip side, the poor are constantly being marketed to. They're seduced into spending what little they have by all those influence-rich, smiling brand ambassadors that flood our media.
All of this brings us to a deeply philosophical question. Is poverty cultural, or is prosperity habitual? She genuinely challenges us to take a step back and reflect. Is our economic status tied to deeply ingrained daily habits and mindsets, rather than just whatever starting balance we have in our bank accounts?
To help answer that, she observes something fundamental. Everybody plans, but the nature of those plans is wildly different. The wealthy exercise this incredible patient consistency. They use well-directed efforts that steadily compound into more wealth. Conversely, a hasty, get-rich-quick mentality, which she notes is often adopted by the poor, tragically plunges them even further into deprivation.
And you can see how these mindsets bleed directly into daily routines. She paints a picture where the deprived often seek out entertainment and pleasure as a quick momentary escape into a fantasy world. But the satiated rich, they practice intense discipline. They're burning the midnight oil on the drawing board, refining their strategies while the rest of the world is fast asleep.
This leads to a truly fascinating dynamic regarding labor. She impartially asserts that, ultimately, those who are rich in knowledge and ideas are going to rule over those who rely solely on physical strength. But building that knowledge takes a lot of time. So she asks a pretty harsh question here. Can the physically exhausted, overworked poor even afford the luxury of time that it takes to sit down, learn, and strategize?
The crazy thing is, this compounds into almost ironic perks for the wealthy. Society naturally flocks to them. She lists out how they receive unsolicited gifts, they get tax rebates simply for giving to the poor, and most importantly, they have the sheer free time needed to think and to write the very instructional books that the rest of the world reads.
When you pull all of these variables together, Oladevid's overarching thesis becomes crystal clear. Time, finance, and knowledge are leveraged in entirely opposite directions. You've got the wealthy buying hours, building multi-generational portfolios, and generating enduring ideas. And then you have the poor, who are forced to sell their time, rely on debt for basic security, and exhaust themselves through physical labor. It is a complete structural divergence.
Now, if we zoom out globally, she observes how these systemic habits manifest on a massive scale. You have these vast, impoverished populations existing in isolated, developing regions within Asia and Africa.
Ola David uses this harsh reality as a major wake-up call. She's challenging us to stay fully awake and actively find ways to turn the tide of this global inequality. Which leads right into a crucial pivot about our future. Think about it. Who are our educators? Are they rich or poor at heart? It's a highly practical dilemma. Can a person with a poor mindset realistically teach another person how to be rich? Because at the end of the day, the mindset of the teacher is absolutely going to dictate the outcome of the student.
To fix this, Ola David proposes a really powerful solution. She says, truly prosperous minds may have to educate the poor to enter any desirable productive trade with sights set and shoulders square. It's a huge call to action. Basically, those who have mastered the habits of prosperity have to step up. They must take up the mantle to empower others and bring them confidently into global trade.
Finally, she leaves us with this one last super provocative thought to ponder. If that ancient Yoruba proverb is true, and it really is the rich who own the trade, well, considering bankers and fund managers basically control the flow of money in our modern global economy, are they the true rich who dictate global trade today? It really forces us to ask exactly who holds the power in our incredibly complex financial system. Definitely something to think about as you go about your day. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.